Welcome to Sports Live Media. It's your main man, Sports Live, with today's broadcast. The 2023 FIBA Men's Basketball World Cup will be coming August 25th through September 10th of 2023. This this broadcast is just a preview of that World Cup, which is coming in the coming days. So let's get into that, shall we? The World Cup, as you know, in basketball is a real big thing. 32 countries from around the world take part in this annual broadcast, or this annual event that's not annual, it's every 4 years. I apologize. Anyway, there's 32 teams in this World Cup, and it's separated by group play. So Group A is Angola, Dominican Republic, Philippines, Italy. Group B will be South Sudan, Serbia, China, and Puerto Rico. Group C is the United States, Jordan, Greece, New Zealand. Group D is Egypt, Mexico, Montenegro, Lithuania. Group E is Germany, Finland, Australia, Japan. Group F will be Slovenia, Cape Verde, Georgia, the country, not the state or the university, Venezuela. Group G, Iran, Spain, Cote d'Ivoire or the Ivory Coast, Brazil. Group H will be Canada, Latvia, Lebanon, and France. The games for this World Cup will be played in the Philippines, Japan, and Indonesia. All right. In pool play, they will play 6 games, and it will be played in each group. On August 25th, 8 games total that day. Angola versus Italy, Finland versus Australia, Mexico versus Montenegro, Latvia versus Lebanon, Dominican Republic versus Philippines, Germany versus Japan, Egypt versus Lithuania, and Canada versus France. On August 26th, there will be 8 games. South Sudan versus Puerto Rico, Cape Verde versus Georgia, Jordan versus Greece, Iran versus Brazil, Slovenia versus Venezuela, Serbia versus China, USA versus New Zealand, and Spain versus Cote d'Ivoire or the Ivory Coast. On August 27th, there will be 8 games that day. They'll have Italy versus Dominican Republic, Australia versus Germany, Montenegro versus Egypt, Lebanon versus Canada, the Philippines versus Angola, Japan versus Finland, Lithuania versus Mexico, and France versus Latvia. On August 28th, there'll be 8 games. China versus South Sudan, Venezuela versus Cape Verde, New Zealand versus Jordan, Cote d'Ivoire or the Ivory Coast versus Iran, Georgia versus Slovenia, Puerto Rico versus Serbia, Greece versus the United States, and Brazil versus Spain. On August 29th, there will be 8 games. Germany versus Finland, Angola versus Dominican Republic, Egypt versus Mexico, Lebanon versus France, Australia versus Japan, the Philippines versus Italy, and Montenegro versus Lithuania. On August 30th, there'll be 8 games played. South Sudan versus Serbia, Georgia versus Venezuela, USA versus Georgia, Cote d'Ivoire or the Ivory Coast versus Brazil, Slovenia versus Cape Verde, China versus Puerto Rico, Greece versus New Zealand, Iran versus Spain. On August 31st, there will be 8 games, and this will be the round for 17 through 32, the classification round. So the games that will take place that day. Oh, and when I label these groups, it will be 1 through 4, depending on where they play. So when I say a group letter and a group number, that's who they're playing based on the position within their pool group. So it'll be Group E3 versus Group F4, Group F3 versus Group E4, Group A3 versus Group B4, Group B3 versus Group A4, Group C3 versus Group D4, Group D3 versus Group C4, Group D3 versus H4, I'm sorry, Group D4 rather, Group H3 versus Group G4. The second round of this World Cup starts on September 1st, and there will be 8 games. Again, we're doing this by group. Group E1 versus Group F2. Group F1 versus Group E2. Group A1 versus Group B2. Group B1 versus Group A2. Group C1 versus Group D2, Group D1 versus Group C2, Group G1 versus Group H2, Group H1 versus Group G2. All right, on September 2nd, this will be another classification round, and it'll be for 17 through 32, and that will continue. Group E4 versus Group F4, Group E3 versus Group F3, Group A4 versus Group B4, Group A3 versus Group B3, Group C4 versus Group D4, Group C3 versus Group D3, Group G4 versus Group H4, and Group G3 versus Group H3. So on September 3rd, there will be 8 games, and it'll be the second round that continues. And apparently, the ones that make it to the second round are the top 2 from each of the pool groups. So Group E2 versus Group F2, Group E1 versus Group F1, Group A2 versus Group B2, Group A1 versus Group B1, Group C2 versus Group D2, Group C1 versus Group D1, Group G2 versus Group H2, and Group G1 versus Group H1. September 4th, there will be no games scheduled that day. It is considered a rest day. September 5th, there will be 2 games that day. And at this point, it'll be them continuing the games. It'll be game 81 at that point. Group I1 versus Group J2. Game 82 will be Group J1 versus Group I2. September 6th, it'll be Group K1 versus Group I2. Group 2I versus Group K2. September 5th and 6th will be the starting of the finals. In regard to that, it'll be the first of 4 finals that will go on. There'll be 2 games each day on those. So I'm not sure how that's going to work. You'll have to just check the bracket at that time to see who's playing who at that point. September 7th, the classification games, 5th through 8th place. Those games, there'll be 2 games on September 7th. On September 8th, it'll be the semifinals, which is the top 4 teams at that point. September 9th, there'll be 2 games, and those games will determine 5th and 6th place. September 10th will be 2 games. One will be the championship game between, whoever the top 2 teams that are left. And then immediately after that will be your third place match. So again, the World Cup of FIBA basketball for 2023 will take place August 25th, 2023 through September 10th, 2023. And they will be taking place in the following countries. Let's see if I can find them. They'll be playing the Philippines, Japan, and Indonesia. You'll have to figure out what time it's going to be playing in your local market. Just take note that they are ahead of us in time. So some of the games that I mentioned may be played really, really early. Some may be played really, really late. Anyway, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this broadcast today. And I'm sorry about the background noise. I decided to go outside and do things a little different today. If you will, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. And please hit the notification bell so you can be made aware when I'm going live, when I have new sports action videos, or if I have any other special announcements regarding sports. Thank you again. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Peace out, man.